Hussain, co-founder and CEO of Mareekh Dynamics. It's an Australian space technology startup. Mareekh is the word for Mars in Arabic and Urdu. So that's what it means, pretty much Mars Dynamics. I'm going to present today our patented hybrid power generation concept for Mars, which we have named Mareekh process, and it is a proudly Australian-made concept. So power on Mars. There are few resources of power that you can use, but they are pretty limited. Like currently, solar is the mainstay of power for rovers on Mars, but the problems are that solar flux is very low on Mars. It's around 1/3 solar energy reaching Martian surface. Then there's problem of dust and solar outage because of the dust storm that can last for weeks or even months. Then the second choice is the nuclear. Currently, RTGs are being used for rovers on Mars. They can produce up to few 100 watts of power. The NASA kilo power concept should be able to run a small base with few kilowatts of power. And in the future, it has been perceived that small modular reactors can also be used for Martian bases. But they are still limited in power. I mean, they're costly, they're heavy, and they can produce up to a few hundred megawatts. So, if you talk about the natural resources on Mars that can produce power, we talk of wind, but the problem is the Martian atmosphere is very thin, it's less than 1% of as compared to Earth. So it's not a viable option. I mean, you would need huge wind turbines, and I don't know, the infrastructure cost would be huge. Tidal is out of question. There are no open water bodies on Mars. Fossil fuel, unlikely, highly unlikely. Geothermal energy, now there is geothermal energy pockets under Martian crust, but Martian crust is very thick, and there are no geothermal reserves on Mars on the surface. So that's also not a viable option at this moment. And radioactive minerals for nuclear reactors, at this moment we don't know of any solid nuclear reserves, nuclear material reserves on Mars. The power consumption on Mars would be, for a human colony per capita, would be much higher than it is on Earth. So we found a couple of interesting features of Martian geology and Martian geography that we find promising for future power generation on Mars. One of those is permafrost. There's huge deposits of permafrost, pretty much from poles to mid latitudes. Even some studies have suggested that they might be as further down as equator. They are a few inches below the surface and can be several kilometers thick. Like in this picture, after landslide, this thick layer of permafrost has been visible in high-rise image. Then it comes the Martian atmosphere. So the very thin Martian atmosphere, less than 1% of the atmospheric pressure on Earth, and it's very cold. The temperature can range anywhere from -150 degrees at poles at night to sometimes can touch up to 20 degrees at equator on midday, but on average it stays around -60, -50 on average. But that creates a very deep heat sink that we can utilize. So we came up with this concept of hybrid power generation, which is pretty much based on in situ resource utilization of Martian permafrost to generate power, utilizing unique attributes of the Martian environment. And this is patented through the United States Patent and Trademark Office. So the basic concept is that we propose exposing, like what happens, the basic principle is that when you expose superheated water to an atmospheric pressure below its saturation pressure, it explodes. So imagine that if you have a balloon of some super strong material, and you fill it with superheated steam, in Earth's atmospheric pressure, it will expand until it reaches its saturation temperature pressure, which is on Earth's atmosphere it is 1 bar pressure and 100 degrees centigrade. And at that, so while doing so, it will do some work, okay? But it will stop when it reaches its saturation pressure and temperature. But if you, for example, imagine that if you could teleport that balloon to Mars, it will continue to expand. And when it will expand until the point when it reaches its saturation pressure and temperature on Mars, which is less than 1% of atmospheric pressure, on Earth and pretty much 0 degrees. And that's when it will condense. But in doing so, it will continue to do work which it wasn't able to do on Earth. Even though you provided the same amount of energy to create that superheated steam, but on Earth, you're not getting that much amount of work that you can get on Mars by providing the same amount of internal energy. Like the balloon had the same internal energy, but the amount of work it did on Mars is much, much more than it can do on Earth. And this is the basic principle. This is what we wanted to harness. So yeah, don't try this at home. This is like someone boiled water in a microwave and brought it up. And so for legal purposes, I have to put that caution. Someone might come back to me and say, "Hey, I followed your advice, and now look at my face." Anyway, so this is the layout of our concept. What we are doing is creating an artificial geothermal system, heating up the permafrost to turn it into superheated water and exposing it to the Martian atmospheric conditions to run a steam turbine to generate electricity. And so I'll go into the further details. This is the diagram from our patent document, all this labeling, which I will be discussing, so we don't need to go through it just now. So it starts with an auxiliary source of power, which can be solar or nuclear. And it will be used to run an enclosed filament heater to heat up a heat transfer medium, which we have chosen carbon dioxide because there's plenty of it. Under high pressure and low temperature, we can make it supercritical, we can make it liquid so that it can be pumped easily. And we will pump it through a heater. So heat transfer to the subsurface permafrost to create water reservoir. And in this example, like ice is minus 170 degrees, say for example if it's 300 meter below, so that will be held at 30 bar pressure. And we can heat it up to say 30 degrees. We want to maintain that heat and create a water cavity or water reservoir deep inside the permafrost. And then we can, with the use of a bidirectional turbine, we can bring it up to recovery buffer tank, where we will maintain the water at 30 degrees. It will be well insulated at 1 bar pressure. And then this water is then fed through two feeder systems. One is for the formation of superheated subcritical water up to 30 bar pressure and 233 degrees, and to release it in a flash tank at low pressure, say for example 0.6 bar, to create flash steam and flash condensate. And then there is a high pressure feeder system feeding that water through a high pressure feeder system to create supercritical water at 300 bar pressure and 550 degrees centigrade in an isochoric process, so that you can evade the pseudo boiling or the Vidom line of the supercritical water. And then there is a combined injector which would mix the flash saturated steam from low pressure feeder turbine, low pressure feeder system, and the supercritical water from the high pressure feeder system through, and then inject it into the turbine through Venturi effect as superheated steam at 2 bar pressure at 195 degrees C into an exit steam at 0.01 bar pressure. This is slightly higher than the Martian atmospheric pressure at 7 degrees centigrade, and which will eventually condense into water at 6 degrees centigrade at 0.01 bar pressure. And the way we're going to achieve this is not through surface condenser, but through an aperture with exit steam. So we're going to let some steam exit into the Martian atmosphere so that we can achieve this adiabatic expansion, which leads to cooling, and a part of it will condense it so that we can reuse it for the feeder systems. So, and then that turbine motion can generate electricity. So we ran some numbers and see what happens. So we calculated the power output for 1.5 kilogram inlet steam at 2 bar pressure and 195 degrees C against the exit steam of 0.1 kilogram at 0.01 bar pressure and 7 degrees, and 1.4 kilogram of condensate water at 0.01 bar pressure and 6 degrees C. So we used the conventional steam turbine calculator, and we found out that the energy output we were getting was 4040 kilowatt or kilojoules per second at 95% conversion efficiency. Now, the glitch here is that it is calculating it for an isentropic efficiency of 422% because it's presuming that all the energy that is coming out is being converted into mechanical energy, which is not true. So, but at least this is the energy we are getting. So that's why we kept it this way. Now let's calculate the energy input of the process. So since we are losing 0.1 kilogram of steam per second, so this is the amount of water we would need from the reservoir per second, because rest of the water is being replenished. So the amount of energy that we need to create 30 degree centigrade water of 1.1 kilogram mass would be 60 kilojoule, combining the specific heat of ice and the latent heat of fusion, and then the specific heat of water from 0 to 30, and that turns out to be 60 kilojoules per 0.1 kilogram of ice conversion from minus 70 degrees to 30 degrees. Then we got the low pressure feeder system. So it is taking water from three sources. First one is the condensate from the turbine, which is distilled water at 6 degrees centigrade, and we're going to raise its temperature to 233 degrees. So this is the amount of energy to take. Then the second source is the condensate from the flash tank. That's 2.5 kilograms, and we can calculate the energy required for it to rise from 86 degrees flash condensate to 233, and the third one is the 0.1 kilogram from the buffer tank. So in total, we'll require 2069 kilojoules of energy. And then high pressure feeder system, it's got supercritical water. We are producing supercritical water at 300 bar pressure at 550 degrees centigrade in an isochoric process, so that we don't have to deal with the heat requirement to cross the Verdon line and avoid the pseudocritical boiling. So the heat requirement for half a liter or half kilogram of water to rise it up to 550 degrees is 582 kilojoules. Now adding together, it gives us a figure of 2710 kilojoules per second to create 1.5 kilogram steam at 2 bar pressure and 195 as from the mixing of the two steams, which is actually quite less than the output we are getting. We are getting 440 kilowatt, and we are inputting 2710 kilojoules. So within this is an extra of 1340 kilojoules. Now if we just subtract the enthalpy of the exit steam, we are still getting 1046 kilojoules. So where is this extra energy coming from? And I struggled to answer this question for like a year, and then I started figuring out that perhaps the high school thermodynamics might have the answer. And then I started thinking of Gibbs free energy, which is something to do with the entropy. Because what we're doing is, the entropy of ice is very low because there's a lot of order in it. And especially under pressure, it's even lower. And when you are exiting it in form of steam in Martian atmospheric conditions, it has got a very, very high entropy, much more entropy than we can achieve, and in a very quick manner. So basically, the better term for it is Gibbs available energy, and the formula is, so it happens when there's a phase change from one phase to another, and one phase with a certain entropy to a different entropy, which is if the entropy is increasing at high temperature, there's a negative energy, or the energy that comes out of the system, or if the entropy is reducing at low temperature, then the extra energy becomes visible. So in our Mareekh process, there are two phase changes are happening. One is the conversion of ice at high temperature to steam in Martian atmospheric temperature and pressure. The second one is conversion of steam, most of it at low temperature, to cooled steam and condensate water. So it's basically, if you see that the subsurface ice has a certain level of energy, Gibbs free energy or Gibbs available energy, which we make it available through activation energy at high temperature, and when we release it into the Martian atmosphere in form of exit steam, there's a net output. And there's the calculation for the factoring in the entropies and enthalpy of the subsurface ice, and entropy and enthalpy of the exit steam and the condensate. I have calculated it for the condensate, basically. So is extraction of Gibbs available energy from subsurface ice a net efficient process on Mars than Earth? If it was efficient on Earth, someone would have figured it out already. So in this example, for example, This is subsurface ice minus 70 degrees. We heat it up to superheated steam at 507 Kelvin at 30 bar pressure and releasing it as low pressure steam at 2 bar pressure. There's a phase change, there's some Gibbs reaction happening, and then we release that atmosphere to Martian atmospheric conditions. So there's a rapid increase in the volume and cooling, and so there's a lot of enthalpy change, and then in an adiabatic process, it's turning into a condensate. So the net output that we are getting, theoretical output, is 470 kilojoules in this process per kilogram. If you replicate this process on Earth, so first of all, there is not a deep heat sink. So in the same parameters, when we release it to Earth's atmospheric conditions, it will reach its saturation temperature pressure at 1 bar and will remain as a steam because the Earth's atmosphere is not cold. It's anywhere from like 20 degrees, 40 degrees, you name it. So if we want to condense it, we use a surface condenser, means that we are having to reject the energy to the exterior of the system. And in doing so, if we find out that on Earth, the same replicating the same process is basically an energy expenditure process. You are spending more energy. A net output of minus 2,484 as compared to plus 470 on Mars. Now, in Mareekh process, we have made it even more efficient because if you look there, we have done this calculation based on creation of superheated steam. Now, in Mareekh process, you would have realized that we are not forming steam at any part of the energy input process. We are letting Martian atmosphere do this job for us. So we are avoiding conversion of water into steam in any of the energy input steps. And why we did that? Because when you convert water into steam, you need to give it the latent heat of vaporization, which is huge, 2256 kilojoules. So we are just letting the Martian atmosphere do for us. So for 0.6 bar pressure, like which is the internal pressure of the flash tank, we are still able to flash 1/3 of the water into steam and 2/3 is converting into the condensate. Now, why we are using the supercritical water is because we cannot make saturated flash steam to run turbines. And we cannot even pump it back into the heater to heat because you cannot pump saturated steam. When you start pumping it, it will condense. So we are using superheated water as a heating medium for that saturated steam, as well as increasing in its volume. So, and the second thing we're doing is we are using Martian atmosphere to expand the steam and drop its pressure with the use of aperture or a pressure control valve, which is helping some of the steam to exit. So we are not needing surface condenser here, but letting the Martian atmosphere do the job for us. We can enhance this process by use of some radiator fins connected to the exterior, which is like minus 50. So that will also help speed up the formation of condensate without having to spend any extra energy. Now, if we calculate the Gibbs or the phase changes and how much Gibbs energy we are getting in every step. Now, that doesn't mean that we are getting this energy in these steps. It's just that this is where it becomes available. So one of the phase changes is happening in the reservoir where the ice is changing into water and giving us or making minus 21 kilojoules of energy, making it available. Then the second one is in the low pressure feeder system where the flash steam, so the superheated subcritical water is converting into flash steam and there's a phase change happening and minus 3000. So minus is the convention that energy is coming out of the system in this free energy. So 3074 kilojoules of energy is becoming available. And the third one is the high pressure feeder system where 1144 kilojoules of energy is becoming available. Now if we add these available energies, it gives us at 95% conversion efficiency. It is giving us a figure of 4027 kilojoules, which is fairly close to the original direct calculation of 4040 kilowatt, which is within 99.6% of the direct calculation. Now, if we could run another calculation, if we just the conventional equation of power output of a steam turbine, which is the flow rate multiplied by the enthalpy drop multiplied by the conversion efficiency. We are still getting 4056 kilojoules, which is still within 99% of our original calculations. Now, the problem here is, this is the amount of energy that is coming out. Doesn't mean that it is the power output we're getting in the form of mechanical energy. Okay, so if we just calculate the power output from the enthalpy change from the high pressure steam to the low pressure steam before condensation into water, it gives us a figure of 513 kilowatt. But in that case, because the rest of the water is converting into a condensate, and when steam condenses into water, it releases the latent heat of vaporization, and that's a lot again. So either we can release it into the exterior. If we are using fins, it will just heat up the fins and the energy will be exited. Or if you're not using it, then it will release it as a heat energy. Now, following the second law of thermodynamics, we cannot increase the temperature of the environment. Okay, but because Martian environment is already maintained at -50 and the condensate temperature is 6, there's still a lot of room to extract that energy, and that heat can be utilized for a lot of other purposes, because energy or heat is a very precious commodity on Mars. So even if we might be getting less power than we initially gave to the system, we are still getting extra heat energy. So if you subtract the original power input, you're still getting 833 kilojoules per second of heat energy that you can find a way to utilize it rather than just letting it escape in the atmosphere. So on top of it, during this process, when the high pressure steam is flowing towards the low pressure, 20% of it will condensate anyway. So that will increase our power output by 20%. And on Mars, because the temperature is very low, the rate of condensation will automatically be happening as a result of the adiabatic expansion and the low temperature. So we will get some more extra condensate. So I haven't done maths on those ones, but hopefully once I understand this, the thermodynamics behind it more, then I will be able to calculate the accurate amount of actual mechanical power output that will be converting into electricity. So in conclusion, the concept of hybrid power generation on Mars through in situ resource utilization of the subsurface ice and the use of Martian atmosphere as a very deep heat sink provides an alternate view on solving the power conundrum on Mars, which is otherwise devoid of most conventional resources of energy. So Mareekh process may enable generation of unlimited amount of clean energy, which is vital for establishing a permanent independent human settlement on the red planet. You can download the presentation from our website with this QR code, and I'll take questions if you have any. Yes.
So, thank you, first of all. I have a question about how you plan on inserting the CO2 into the ice.
Okay, so
because when you put CO2 into water, you get sparkling water.
Oh yes, coming to that. Yes, that's a good question. So if you look at working, yes. If you look at this recovery buffer tank, it is recovery. So you are recovering. So when sparkling water, the carbon dioxide will fizz out when you release it at a lower pressure. So the pressure we have maintained here in the recovery buffer tank is 1 bar, and we need that carbon dioxide back to recirculate. Otherwise, we are not too worried about it, because we can always get carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. But one of the functions of recovery buffer tank is to release that extra carbon dioxide. And then there's the slurry removal as well. So I thought you were going to ask me that as well. So that will also be taken care of. Again, it's not an engineering design, it's a conceptual design.
So the water will be fizzing in the buffer tank.
Yes.
But if you have even a bit of CO2 in that water and you put it in a turbine, the turbine blows up.
Yeah, so that's an engineering problem. That's why you are here. You fix it for me.
I have other questions.
Yes,
about
please,
that.
go ahead. Alexander.
Hi. So something that kind of intrigues me is you're using turbines instead of pistons, which in my mind would produce more mechanical force using pistons instead of turbines.
Honestly, I'm going to be honest with you, Alexander. I thought of piston only after we got the patent. I think piston might be more effective, but I haven't figured it out. But I did figure it out a bit too late. So we might actually develop another design based on which, and that's a very valid suggestion. And look at that. Look, yes, I have thought of it. So this might be our next design. or it might be for you.
I'm gonna be totally honest. This is kind of funny too. I thought of that thinking of steam engines for ships.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the Titanic, they had two types of engines. They had a turbine engine, which was the low power engine, and then they had the two piston engines, which were the high power engines, and that's just how it. So equally funny how we did.
Yeah, we don't want a Titanic-like situation on Mars, but hopefully,
Yeah.
as long as we already know beforehand what we're doing.
No, if you want to rain on your parade, but you can't have pistons with water because you need combustion.
I mean, I don't know if there's other engineers that can prove me wrong, but to have a piston system, you need combustion,
Yeah,
and you cannot combust water.
yeah, of course. I mean, we're not combusting water here.
Okay.
Anyway. Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else has a question.
Steam engines are pistons. Yeah.
Yeah,
Steam is the
that's how steam trains work.
Yeah, so
pistons, and you force the steam in.
the steam is the
So
replacement.
the explosive, the adiabatic effect there, the explosive.
But they're very inefficient. I mean, very inefficient. We moved on past it.
Yeah, that's what I said. Oh, I only thought of piston after we got the patent, and I said, oh, we could have added that to the patent as well, because now we have to spend another $20,000 for a new patent.
So I skipped the beginning of the presentation, so I didn't catch if the water reservoir is like it's under the ground and it's the melted ice, or it's like founded reservoir. It is melted ice under the ground, or did you just it's supposed to find some reservoir of water and use that water?
No, so what we are doing is we are injecting the heat, a heat source as superheated supercritical carbon dioxide at 700 degrees centigrade into the permafrost, deep underground, like 300 meters, and creating a water pocket. By melting the permafrost, we are creating a water reservoir, and it will be carefully controlled the amount of heat and amount of carbon dioxide you're sending down, so that we can maintain a 30 degree centigrade water reservoir. We don't want to get any higher because it will make an unnecessarily big reservoir, and we don't want to go too low because that will just easily freeze over. So we want to maintain a safe temperature. So this is actually the water cavity that we are creating by giving external energy through auxiliary power, which is solar array or a nuclear.
I'm asking because of the possible salinity of the water or some dirt, which can then plug the system, maybe some water stone and so on, like the minerals and such.
Yes, so there are two things here. So supercritical carbon dioxide is a very good solvent. It forms carbonates, and carbonates are insoluble, so they will settle down. And if there are any other impurities, it will be removed at the recovery buffer tank level. And the third thing is the water that is going into the high pressure feeder system, which is supercritical water, and you don't want to mess with that. That water is purely coming from the condensate from the turbine, which is the distilled water.
Okay.
So that's how we would evade the particulate problem in the high sensitive region, which is the high pressure feeder system. But again, that is another engineering problem. So we can always have more equipment here to make sure that there is no dirt going in the system.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Excellent presentation, thank you. You might have mentioned this, I just, if you did, please remind me, how much total water loss by percentage? Because you said sometimes you're going to be blowing some of the steam out to the atmosphere, you're losing some of the steam. So what is your total efficiency of water recycled versus water lost for each?
So I have done these calculations for 1.5 kilograms of steam, and we are getting 1.4 kilograms of condensate. So it's a little under 10%, which is 0.1 kilogram. Again, it all depends on the size of the of the low pressure turbine housing. So if you make it bigger, you might need to lose less or more. I haven't figured that out. Because for 1.1 kilogram steam at 7 degrees, the volume it needs is 13 cubic meters. So if it is any So it will be depending upon the size that we choose for the high pressure, low pressure feeder turbine, low pressure turbine housing. But again, it all depends on thermodynamic calculations, because at this moment I don't know that how much adiabatic cooling will be achieved by losing less than 10%. We might have to lose more than 40%. We don't know. But it also depends upon the temperature of the outer environment, because when it is colder outside, you may need to lose less steam to achieve that cooling, and when it's a bit warmer, you might need to. So it's going to be variable. That's why it's the pressure control valve that is controlling the amount of steam that we are exiting, which can be anywhere from 10% to maybe up to 40%, 50%.
So you're simultaneously terraforming Mars.
Yes, but the problem is, if we terraform Mars and make that constant pressure close to Earth's atmosphere, this will fail. So in order to save my invention, I would be extremely anti-terraforming, because I don't want this process to be killed.
I think you'll have about 10,000 years.
Yes. Yeah, by that time we would have fusion reactors. So yeah, don't worry. So we are doing terraforming by releasing steam into the atmosphere in the long run. Yes.
So, and looking at where it says condensate router pump, there's a pump going out to the water reservoir in the Craterhab.
Yes.
I missed your talk about the Craterhab.
No, I didn't talk about that at all. Oh,
No,
you
but
missed that talk. Yes.
I did miss that talk, but I'm just asking, so far, the losses that you explained were, about a little bit less than 10%, unless you decide to flush water out past the condensate router into a water reservoir.
That'll be warm water for a good sauna for people.
Wonderful.
Yes.
So that would happen because, help me understand under what circumstances, under what conditions do you choose, oh, we have too much water, let's shunt some off to the water reservoir. Or the water reservoir needs water, let's go ahead and shunt it off, and that's okay because...
So this water is the one that we can choose either to reroute it for human consumption or reroute it back into the system. So if we reroute some water for the human consumption, then we have to extract more water from here. So we'll have to spend more energy. But so that water is not coming without a cost. We'll have to spend extra energy to make water available for. So that's a second advantage, that we can customize the amount of water we want to extract. I mean, water consumption by people would be highly subsidized as well, because it's like today's coffee will be tomorrow's coffee, will be day after tomorrow's coffee on Mars for a long time.
So this is actually like a very complicated and expensive way of filtering and heating water for your habitat.
Yes.
And you get energy too.
Yeah, but I mean, it may not be requiring hot water. I mean, it's just water. It's clear distilled water. So that's one way of getting it, and while getting it from the permafrost, we're also getting energy out of it. Yes.
So did you estimate the size of your condensers, the heat exchangers?
So there is no condenser here. We are using the Martian low atmospheric pressure and temperature to achieve the water condensation. But if we want to enhance that process, we can use some radiator fins. Again, so 20 square meter of fin area should be able to produce up to 20 kilograms of condensate if the temperature difference between inside and outside is minus 50. So, but again, that's when we need to lose the heat to the exterior. Whether we can be able to capture that heat or not, I'm not sure.
Go ahead.
Yes, please.
So I don't really see on here, I might be missing something, but I'm not seeing any scale for the size of this hole.
Oh, there's no scale, because this is just a flow diagram. Yeah. So it could be the size of a truck maybe, or it could be bigger, it might be a size of a small boat, to get an idea. It depends upon how much power you need. So if you are, I'm sure that we won't be making it to handle 1.5 kilograms of steam. We might, if we make it, it should be several hundred kilograms of water per second. So these structures are going to be huge.
So my question is, this is kind of an engineering question. So which do you think would be more efficient, having multiple small ones or having one or two big ones?
I think one Chernobyl size one would do the job. As long as it doesn't blow up. Yeah, that these are going to be big structures, and they're not going to be needed in immediate future, because for immediate future, when it goes small bases, the kilo power or solar would be enough. That's when we have 1 million or 2 million population that will be requiring like thousands of megawatts. Then even the small modular reactors won't be sufficient. And then plus, I mean, we need to find an indigenous source of energy so that we don't keep on importing stuff from Earth. We have to find a source of energy on Mars itself if we want to create an independent Martian civilization, independent of Earth's influence.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask you
Yes.
one question? So the network that you get out of the turbine,
The network that you get out of the turbine, your input is already liquid CO2. Now, in calculating the net work out of the turbine, did you take into account the work that is going to go into liquefying that CO2? Because on the left-hand side of the graph, I see an input of something that is already processed. It's not coming from the atmosphere. So to liquefy the CO2, it's very expensive because you have to pressurize it and cool it down. And to cool it down, you need a refrigerator of some sort, so that's more power. So I wonder if that power is smaller than the network that you get out of the turbine. So maybe a recommendation
I think it was fairly small. I worked that out fairly long ago, early into my design. That's when I decided to ignore it. It was in a few kilowatts, basically.
because at 5 bar G, so 5 bar, to liquefy CO2, you need to cool it down a lot.
Yes.
So you need
We use
a strong refrigerator.
Yes.
I think they're using the Martian atmosphere for the
No, but we still have to squeeze it down into it. I think I did work it out. I should have included that calculation written somewhere in my 200-page
And
document
just
at
a
home.
nitpick, can you go to the slide where you have the calculations of the turbine?
A few.
Yeah, there you go. So
Yeah.
I just wondered, maybe it's a typo, but how is the isentropic efficiency?
More than 100%. Yes.
Yeah.
Because this calculator is thinking that we are using the entire input to generate electricity, which is of course not the case. Because part of this energy output is coming as heat energy to follow the second law of thermodynamics. So it's always going to be less than 100%. So this is the total amount of energy that is coming out, not necessarily the total amount of mechanical energy. Because if we talk about mechanical energy, if we achieve 100% isentropic efficiency, then the total energy power output for mechanical energy would be around maybe 1000 kilowatt or less. My best calculations were 900 kilowatt.
Okay, I don't want to take too much time, but
No, that's all right. I do have a big but important, and
I still have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
It's a simple formula with the isentropic efficiency, and it cannot be more than 100%.
It cannot.
Yeah.
But because here it is considering that perhaps it is decreasing the entropy of the
But who's considering it?
the calculator? Because I put the parameters at outlet steam at 6 degrees, because I wanted to see what happens when we form the track interface. But I verified these calculations through the change in enthalpy as well. Here. But again, the enthalpy change is the difference is between the inlet stream and the exit condensate, not the exit stream. So how much?
Yeah, but that's the point, right? So the maximum work you can extract is from this, like
Stream to stream.
yeah.
Yes.
Because then when you talk about the temperature difference, is heat. So heat and work are not the same thing.
No. So because when you form condensate,
Yeah.
what happens to the latent heat of vaporization? Where will it go? It will heat up the environment, isn't it? I mean, it will come out somewhere.
Yeah, but it's lost.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So where is it being lost?
No, it's just going through the environment. So it's a heat sink, yeah.
Yes, heat sink. So the heat sink of Martian atmosphere is minus 50 degrees. The temperature of the condensate is 6 degrees.
Yeah.
So it might increase the temperature of the environment from anywhere from 6 degrees to 50
No, but that's the definition of a heat sink. It has infinite heat capacity, so you
Yes.
cannot change the temperature of a heat sink.
Yeah, that's what I didn't know. I mean, I
Okay.
knew, but I was a bit skeptical of whether you would be able to.
No, anything that you dump into environment is lost, unless you use it.
Like a heat engine for example.
Yeah, but it's such low quality heat, like going back to the exergy this like conversation. So it's so close to the temperature of the environment that it's basically useless.
Yes.
But yeah, okay, no, but very interesting. Thank you so much, Mohammed.
No, thank you. But I mean, the whole point is that we are getting more energy than we are putting in.
No,
In
for sure.
whatever form, whether if it is a launch heat to the environment,
Yeah.
we are getting more energy
Yeah.
from the ice. This is this
That's
is important
important.
first step. That's right. You can always catch me and
Or you
I
guys
think
can go.
we're missing out on our dinner. So, thank you so much for your patience.